Boker Tov. Good morning. I hope you're having a good day and a good beginning to this glorious day that God has blessed us with. There's a lot of anger, frustration, bitterness, resentment in our country. I want to tell you a thought from this week's Torah portion that I actually gave a few years ago, more like 10 years ago, but I want to connect it to what's going on in America today and the realities we have and where we go from here. So everything in the Torah is there for a reason, and there's a message in everything. The beginning of this week's Torah portion, Naso, tells us about the three families of the Levites. You see, you had Aaron, Moses, and Miriam. They were the children of Yocheved. Okay, now there were three brothers, and their names were Gershon, Kahat, and Merari. And these were the three families of the Levites. When the Jewish people traveled in the desert for 40 years, they made 42 stops. Every time they stopped and they came back and they set up again, they had to pack up the entire tabernacle, which was huge. It was the edifice where God dwelled in the desert. There was spirituality, there was holiness, there was vessels, there was curtains, there was sockets and pieces and wood. There was a lot of items that had to be moved from place to place. Gershon, Kahat, and Merari, these three families were the ones who carried and traveled with the tabernacle. And they're counted separately in this week's Torah portion, separate from all the Jewish people last week. Now, I don't know if you know, but in Judaism, what's in a name is very important. The name of a person connotates to who they are, to the mechanism of their soul, to the makeup of their spirituality, etc., etc. And the rabbis tell us that these three families, Gershon, Kahat, and Merari, are three stages in the spiritual growth, and also three stages in the spiritual reality of the Jewish people as a whole. Kahat, the word Kahat comes from the word harmony, tranquility. Gershon means to expel, and Merari means to be bitter. So these are the three families, Kahat, Gershon, and Merari. Kahat carried all the vessels in the temple, the menorah, the altar, the trays for the bread, all the valuable things that were there. Gershon, they carried the curtains and all the coverings of the tabernacle, and Merari, they carried the sockets, all the foundations, Yistot HaMishkan, all the foundations of the tabernacle. The rabbis say that these three names represent three different types of Jews, or even sometimes the same type of Jew, but at different levels of their life. You have Kahat. Kahat represents a Jew who is in full harmony. His soul is totally in harmony, in unison with his life, with what he does. He doesn't have temptations or challenges or struggles to do things that are not good. Everything is harmonious within him. Gershon represents the Jew who expelled the evil inclination, but he always has the temptations. He has urges and temptations to do things that are not perfect, that are not right, but he constantly expels it. He overcomes it. He wins it. He thinks of something he wants to do that might be bad, that might not be perfect, and then he says, no, I'm not going to do that, and he gets over. Merari is the bitter Jew. What does the bitter Jew mean? He's a Jew who fails, who makes mistakes, who does things that are not right, who's imperfect, yet he's not satisfied with the status quo. He's bitter, and he's frustrated, and he's upset about where he stands and the things that he's doing. And he wants to change. Tell us the rabbis, you see, you might think, what's the connection of Gershon, Kahat, and Merari, these three families, to us in our daily life? Tell us the rabbis that we might think that, only a Jew who's Kahat, who has harmonious spirituality, or even a Jew like Gershon, who always overcomes his urges, that's an important Jew. They are the ones who could carry the tabernacle. But what does the Torah tell us? No, that Gershon, That Merari, also the Jew who was bitter, who failed constantly, but wasn't satisfied with the status quo, he is a Jew who also carried the tabernacle. And not only did he carry the tabernacle, but think about it. They carried the foundation of the tabernacle. Yisdot HaMishkan, the foundations of the tabernacle were carried by the Jew who is Merari, who has failings, who succumbs to his challenges sometimes, to his urges that are not the proper thing. Yet he's not happy with the status quo. He's frustrated and bitter by it. They carry the foundations. You know why? Because the foundation of Judaism is not about the Jew who's kahat, who's all perfect, who expelled all his inclinations that are evil and only has spiritual utopia that he lives in. Judaism is not only about the Jew who always wins and always expels the urges and always overcomes them. Judaism is about the Jew that has day-to-day struggles, and sometimes he fails. Sometimes he does what's not right. Yet, one important thing, he is frustrated by the status quo. He is unhappy and bitter by his failings. He knows that he did something wrong. And he wants to change it. And he's going to fight. And he's going to get up another day to become a better human being. He recognizes his mistakes. He knows they weren't perfect and right. That's the ones who carry the foundation of Judaism. In every single one of our lives, we have a little bit of all of that. Sometimes we're the kahat. Sometimes we have a spiritual perfection where we have no challenges. Sometimes we struggle, but we always overcome and expel. And sometimes we fail. But the key is, are we frustrated by the status quo? Are we upset by that reality? That's the message. And that's what I want to speak about, what's going on in America today. Yesterday when I came back from New York, I went to the Rebbe's gravesite to pray for my birthday. I went in and out. I literally drove 4 hours. I spent half an hour praying there, and then I drove 4 hours back. And when I came back, I drove by the Rotary where there was a demonstration taking place. And there was hundreds of police officers, and there were people demonstrating. And I thought about it. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of upsetness. There's a lot of anger. So first of all, I want to be clear again that violence, any sort of violence, is inexcusable and unforgivable and needs to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of our laws. We are a country. We are a country of laws. We are a country of principles. And we are a country that protects every single human being. But there's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of upsetness with the status quo. And I think that if you take the three things that I just told you about and you bring them on the opposite way, that's the way we'll get, hopefully, to some sort of harmony and some sort of unity in our country. The first thing we need in this country is Merari. Anyone that tells you, and this is my opinion again, anyone that tells you that the status quo is good and that our country is at a great place when it comes to race relations, when it comes to treating minorities, when it comes to having respect for others, is living in La La Land. The first thing we need to get our country back to order is Merari. We need to be bitter. We need to be frustrated by the status quo. Anyone that saw what happened in Minnesota, anyone that saw that video, which I myself could not even watch, and is not bitter by the status quo and is not frustrated, he doesn't have Merari, is either not living in our country, doesn't know the reality, or otherwise is much more worrisome. But once we have that bitterness and we recognize the challenge, we recognize the problem, we're frustrated by it, we realize that it's wrong and we want to change it, then comes Gershon. Then we have to expel it. How we do that? There's many ways we could go about it. There's many differences of opinion. But that will never happen without being bitter by the status quo first. And then, after we're bitter, we expel it. And only after that could we have kahat, could we have true harmony and true unity in our country. We need those 3 stages. First, we need to be bitter by the status quo. We need to be frustrated by the reality that someone could be treated differently by the color of their skin. One of the basic tenets the Torah teaches us is that every single human being is created in God's image, and that we all have one God. Many of you saw what I shared on Facebook when Mayor Dinkins, who was the mayor of New York City, the first black mayor of New York City, came to visit the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1991. It was during the Crown Heights riots, which was terrible. I lived through that. And the sheer terror and fear that we lived through, where people were running down the streets and throwing stones and breaking stores and screaming "Hail Hitler" while the police watched and did nothing. Literally for 2 days did nothing. It was terrible. And after that, Mayor Dinkins came to visit the Rebbe. And he spoke to the Rebbe about bringing healing between the 2 sides. And the Rebbe said, there is no 2 sides. We're one city. We're one community. We're all children of God. There's one side. And the Rebbe meant that, even in the depth of our pain, when we were suffering so much from hate, from violence. The Rebbe spoke which was truth from a Torah perspective, that there is one God, and there's one community, and we have to have unity, and we can't see it as 2 sides. So the first thing our country needs is for us to be able to realize we have one side, and to see the challenge and the struggle and the pain of others. But it should never lead to violence or to danger. And then we could expel those things that are not good and change it, and hopefully come to a place where we'll have unity, where we'll have love, true harmony. Hine ma'tovo manayim shevet achim kam yachad, when we could all be together and see each other for who we are, not by where we come from. Oseh shalom b'mamav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amein. May God bring peace and unity and love and harmony to our beautiful country speedily. Amen.